This podcast is sponsored by Mad Hatter's Hideaway, 2334 Culver Road, Rochester, New York, 14609. Stop down today for all your smoke and vape accessories.
Stay lit, stay informed.
Welcome to the UrbaQuest Podcast. Introducing your UrbaQuest team. Yuli V, John Z, Logan P, and Justin C. They're bringing you what's burning in cannabis entertainment, events, vendors, cultivation, and culture. So grab your fucking bong. Damn son, who's the plug? And enjoy the show.
I would love to maybe skim the surface. We haven't gone too crazy into breeding on the show, so I don't know how much in depth people understand. But I would love to are you using STS process?
Yeah, but that's not really the key to it. But it's
timing
true that either
frequency.
silver thiosulfate, which they call STS, or colloidal silver, both are acceptable ways of reversing a female. But the real key to doing fem seeds right, I'll just go right to the point. In the past, what guys were doing wrong was that they were using hermaphrodite pollen to make fem seeds, which when you think about the theory behind what's going on there, this is worth mentioning to get us started on the subject. X and Y chromosomes, right? That's what determines a male and a female. So if we are all males, X and a Y chromosome is in our DNA, and that's what defines whether we're men or females. And females have two X chromosomes, right? And so that's just nature and how gender is biologically determined at the moment of conception. When your father's sperm that made contact with your mother's egg, the first one who did that, if it had an X chromosome in it, you'd be a girl. If it had a Y chromosome in it, you'd be a boy, and you're a boy, right? So we all know what happened and why we're boys and girls. That is the thing to keep very firm in your mind, that this is what determines whether it's male or female. So now these guys used part of that logic. You're talking about late 80s, right? 90s maybe, and the scientific research really hadn't been done, and the communication among the breeders at that time with prohibition, you have to remember, we couldn't talk openly and freely to each other. We couldn't even know that each other existed in most cases, right? So it's really a condensed knowledge that, only little pockets of knowledge really exist. It wasn't connected literally like the internet, right? So think about in that environment, these guys are saying, well, hell, if I've got a female and I stress the female until it makes pollen, that pollen's only going to have X chromosomes in it. And when it lands on the other female plant, it's going to make nothing but fem seed, right? Theoretically, that's right. But don't forget, the plant that you got that pollen from, under stress produced male flowers and made pollen. Is that a trait you want to carry on to the next generation? No, because you don't want to breed more hermaphrodites. But that's what these guys were doing, and that's what gave feminized seeds a bad name, right? I don't even call them feminized when I make them. I call them female seeds or fem seeds. And I'll go into the reasons for that. That's another English language thing that I burrowed down deep on. So anyway, bring me back to that later. Right now, I want to just focus on, they were breeding with hermaphrodites, but they thought, well, it's X and X chromosomes, so it's going to give me females, but some of them will be Hermes, and we'll just have to live with some percentage of them being Hermes. And you'll sometimes see on feminized seeds, especially from years ago, it would say 99% feminized or something to give the breeder an out. Somebody came back to him and said, hey, I got some that were, they produced male flowers. And yeah. No, like I said, 99%. I don't do that. I say they're all 100% female. And the reason I can say that is that here's what they were doing wrong. They were stressing a female to make male flowers and then taking the pollen and trying to make fem seeds from. And we all see the folly in that, because what you're doing is essentially using a hermaphrodite to breed with. And we'll define hermaphrodite now too. A hermaphrodite is a plant that appears to be female and then ends up making male flowers, either in some small or larger, or some degree of male flowers will appear on what we thought was a female plant, right? So that's intersex traits, they call that, right? So we want to avoid that altogether. And that only happens to some females, and only under stress sometimes. And some females will do it even if they're not stressed, right? The really bad Hermes, right? The ones that you don't even have to stress and they'll go Hermy on you. But what these guys were doing was taking a plant and essentially finding a Hermy to breed with, which is absolutely the opposite of what you should be doing. Imagine instead an experiment where you've got in a room 100 presumed female plants, and then you use light cycle changes that stress the plant. Like instead of going from 12-12 for a few days, then you go back to like 18-6 or 24 hours of light, and then bring it back to the 12-12 again. Those kinds of changes in cycle, light cycle, will affect especially the sex or gender expression of the female. Because remember, or cannabis plant in general, because remember, what triggers the plant to go into flowering? It's the shorter days, longer nights, right? So obviously the thing that's going to fuck with their ability to show themselves as being truly female or truly male or hermaphrodite or whatever they're going to be could be affected by the light cycle changes the most of any kind of stress that you can put them under. So that's the kind of stress that you put the plant under to determine whether it will Hermy or not. Now, in that little hypothetical room of 100 female plants that we were just talking about, if you then found certain females that had a high quality in terms of their characteristics, like their resin production and their yield and flowering time and so on and so forth, and you love everything about this female, and under all that stress, it never Hermied the whole time, right? That's your baby. That's the one you want to be breeding from. And it's so counterintuitive to those old guys, because they're thinking now, well, wait a second, if the plant won't stress into making male flowers, how am I ever going to get pollen from it, right? And that's a pretty fucking good question. It's like, wait a second, you're telling me that I can only breed with the ones that won't make male flowers and make pollen? Well, how's that going to work? I got two females there. They're not going to cross with each other, right? So you have to understand how those male flowers are actually being created on a botanical or biological level. And what's really happening is it's not the stress ultimately that's causing the gender shift from female to male. What is causing that are hormones, right? Remember, if you see somebody who's trans, right, and they're transitioning, what do? They take hormones to move them in the direction of the gender that they really feel inside themselves that they are, right? So it's not the stress. Stress is just the precursor to the hormonal reaction that the plant is then feeling, right? So we know that if the hormones of the female can be modified or blocked is a better word for it. So if we can block those female hormones from acting on the plant during flowering, miraculously, it makes male flowers instead of female flowers because there's a lack of female hormone. So what you need to do is find the plants that won't make male flowers due to stress, and then hormonally induce them to make male flowers by using the silver thiosulfate or a colloidal silver. And the way that that works is those silver molecules get into the plant's tissue and block, just like you've heard of receptor cells, and then the cell that mates up to the receptor cell. It's a similar process like that that then negates the effect of the female hormone. And then the plant will make male flowers and you will get pollen that then it does have all X chromosomes in it. So it won't make any males, and it's not carrying a Hermy gene because you've just proven it's not a Hermy, right? It wouldn't respond to stress by Hermying. Now, one last caveat to add to that. Now, we're all following along. You're nodding your heads, and I know you follow what I said. So we're proving this female that's going to make the pollen is not a Hermy, and that's what makes it a good source of pollen. Now, remember, if the other female that's the pollen's going to land on has any Hermy traits, that could be carried onto the progeny to the seeds. So you also need to also have tested that plant that it doesn't hermy either, right? And a lot of times when people read or they write me letters and they'll say, you know, so when you're doing this process of feminizing seeds or whatever, they think, and through the words that they use to describe the process, I realize that they're somehow mistaking that it's not the same plant. It's not a selfing process. I'm not taking pollen and then pollinating the same plant.
I mean, you could, but more often than not.
In the rare case that you want to do, okay, an S1 of that one plant, sure. But most of the time you're making a cross between two different females. And I just want to make that clear too to your audience, because sometimes there are people sitting out there going like, yeah, well, so he's selfing the plant? Not always. In fact, rarely. It's rarely that I would do a selfing. I would more often do a cross between two strains that I think would mate well together. And the resulting seeds would then be an improved hybrid of the mother and father, or two mothers.
So
I'll stop after this, but I'm going to tell you a dad joke. Dad joke.
Love them.
Right?
Love dad jokes.
So
My favorite.
the little female, the little cannabis girl says to her mother, like, "Mommy, where did I come from? Where do seeds come from?" And she says, "Ask your other mother."
Love it.
So,
Dad jokes get me every time.
I have another potential caveat, and maybe you can even enlighten me on this before I run down this rabbit hole. Do we know if the intersex genetics, do we know if that's a homozygous or a heterozygous tendency? Because if it's potentially a heterozygous recessive tendency, there is always the potential that it's not going to show up, but because grandma or grandpa was potentially a Hermy, it could still pop up in the grandchild generation, right? But like if it's homozygous, then that obviously wouldn't be a thing.
It seems to be the latter, you know, and I say that not because I have some proof from a botanical study or anything, but it's more from the results. If I'm making tens of thousands of seeds, either I've been pretty lucky in the selection of the females that I'm breeding with, and there weren't any of those heterozygous recessive genes that were really at the root of the cause of the hermaphroditic trait. It could mean that it's really just something that it really has to be a heterozygous trait, and that's probably what it is. Okay. The other thing that I thought was worth explaining was when why did I go so many years and not try to make fem seeds? Because I was afraid of hermaphroditism, and Brothers Grimm, even in the 90s, going back to like when only people in Canada really even knew who we were, the one thing that we were famous for was that our seeds never hermied. Right. So I never wanted to risk that reputation by starting fem seeds and then having them go awry on me. And like, what do I do? So when I first started thinking about it, I said, well, why do you know, where do you think is the problem? I said, well, first thing I'd have to know is what is a hermaphrodite? What defines a hermaphrodite? Is it something like, you know, a male is a X and a Y chromosome and a female is a 2X chromosomes? Maybe Hermes have 2 Y chromosomes or something weird, right? You know, but that would be so unusual, right? You know, even on a probabilistic, like if you did the math on how often might something like that happen, it would be like 1 in several million or something, right? Right. And how common are hermaphrodites in cannabis? It's way too common for it to be something that's the result of something that rarely ever happens, right? So I said, okay, so it can't be the chromosomes that's doing this. And that's when I started looking at the research, and I went into like, you know, science magazines and the periodicals and the things that scientists actually publish their research in. And then I realized, oh, there was this guy named Dr. Ram, and he did a bunch of studies with hermaphroditism and cannabis. And turns out it's hormonally, you know, it's a hormonal reaction. It's not a chromosomal effect. It's a hormonal effect. And that led me down the right path of like, oh, okay, so if the hormones is what's doing it, then let me figure out what's going on with these Hermes. And like I said, the causal chain of cause and effect is that the stress causes the hormonal reaction in the plant, and then it goes hermy. But if it doesn't react to the stress, it just means that, okay, that doesn't trigger hermaphroditism in this plant. It just doesn't have that in its genetic makeup. And then that could still be used as a pollen source, but you can't use stress to induce the flowers. You have to use hormones to induce the flowers. And that's the big difference right there.
Absolutely.
So
Honestly,
anyway, wax on too long about that. I think the point's been made, and this is how you properly make fem seeds, and this is what we do at Brothers Grimm.
The amount of thought that you put
why
behind.
Are you sharing your secrets with the world? I'm like, because I don't want people making mistakes. I'd rather have them do it.
Yeah, right. Have them do it right.
Let everybody know how to do it right. Isn't
that just shows that, you know, Brothers Grimm is not greedy. You're not greedy. You're not a greedy creator. You know, you're a breeder for the masses. You know, for the generations to come. I mean, that's what it is.
It's a great line of work to be in, because it's a little bit like having a band or being a musician, in the sense that the other people who do what you do are not your competition. They just add variety to the field that you're in, right? I'm doing my own thing. I'm not trying to copy anybody else. Nobody's trying to copy me. We're all just making cannabis, and it's our, So I guess it has that nice feel to it. Like I'll share the right way to do things with other people, because I know, they're not going to take my business away. It's just, they're going to, there's room at the table for everybody, I guess, is another way to put it.
The amount of thought and knowledge that you put into it is like the main reason why Justin and I put your stuff into our vault. Like we take our 6-hour round trip road trip.
Yeah,
just go to a
Gene when we went to Gene Traders,
just to walk up to your tent. That was it. You know what I mean?
My boy Mike Abramson will be at the Gene Traders thing, and it was in New York last time, if I'm not mistaken.
That was the one. Yeah, that was the one that we just went to.
Well, no, so they just had another one down in Queens, I think, right?
Right.
We
so
didn't go to Queens. We went to one that was in the southern tier. I believe so. Yeah.
He would have probably been the person you got the seeds from at that event.
Yep.
Anyway, shout out to Mike Abramson. That's Rev Diablo Insano on Instagram.
Hell yeah, go give him a follow, everybody.
Right.
Now, another thing we talked about is that
this is our Instagram, Brothers Grimm Seeds, all one word.
And we'll make sure that's in the show notes as well, so that it's just a click away, or at least a copy and paste away. Sometimes Instagram's funny. But another thing that we had talked about previously was that since you have been one of the breeders that has really been doing this for quite a long time and has really made a name for yourself in the industry, how have you kind of seen the cannabis space evolve over the course of your time in the industry? Because I know it's been light years. Like I know we touched on a little bit, like it was a little bit scared, but is there any other drastic changes that have happened?
I think it's still unfolding, and it's really early days. We can all sit here and think like, oh, wow, it's come a long way. But when you think about it, like take a bigger picture from further up, looking down, we're still only like half the states or fewer are still, legal. And so we have half the country still to win over. We don't have federal laws legalizing marijuana yet. And I think that that's coming anytime. Could be in the next 2 years, 5 years. I would think way sooner than 5 years.
Good news is we have legislation
too. And so I guess what I'm seeing is little movements that aren't nearly as radical shifts as we may see, where it becomes more like a cigarettes or a beer business of, the masses want this benign, rather uninteresting product, but in massive numbers, like basic cigarettes or some stupid thing, or Budweiser
Walmart.
Beer. And we will also have, though, being cannabis in the cannabis space, I think that we have always had a tendency in this culture to seek out like the really dank or like the super nice, right? So I think there'll always be this what would
craft.
You call it? Boutique culture, like a craft beer, like a Sam Adams, or even a smaller, like here in Colorado, it's just all over. There's lots of little breweries, and they're really good beer too. So I think the cannabis is going to be broken up into both of those two things, where we have the boutique quality and the OG type of an effect, a feel that you're with someone who's been. You're deep diving. You're not a consumer who's on the superficial level of, I pick up a pack of those once in a while, and they don't really know what the hell they're smoking. So there'll be a big market for both large commercial sales of marijuana, and it's going to obviously be used in medicines, as it already is, and things like that. And then there'll be a boutique space that I hope that we always would be considered as a boutique space. We're quality over quantity, and my prices, as you pointed out earlier, I don't try to overcharge. I try to make the product what I would, if I were the consumer looking at what I produce, is it worth what I'm asking? And I would always consider it's actually a bargain, and people will sometimes say, I'll get an occasional email where somebody's like, I'm really on a budget. I can barely afford this, that, and the other thing. Do you think you can send me some free seeds? And I always say, well, if you can't afford a pack of seeds, where are you going to get the money for a light bulb? Because it's about the same price. Like $100 is what you would pay for a good 1,000-watt HPS or something. And in your growing experience, how many times has one of those things burned out and you look up at the ceiling and say, oh shit, better run to the store and grab another fucking bulb, right?
But not only that, soil or right.
You don't think twice about spending that, $100 on a light bulb, but people are so they're not thinking things through, because the genetics is really the most important thing in the entire grow operation. That is the one thing that's going to most determine the quality of the outcome. If you won't spend at least what you would on one light bulb on a pack of fucking seeds, I'm sorry, you're not going to succeed in this business.
No,
that's not the approach.
I actually grew outdoor over the past season, and I just used bag seeds. I just wanted to do an experiment to see how good I would do, or how I would fare. And I did really well. I think to the point where now I just can't wait to get my hands on maybe some of your seeds or whatever I got coming towards me, or what I'm gonna do. I don't really know. I don't know. I don't think I want to tarnish Brothers Grimm with the outdoor right now. But
no, let me know. I'd be more than happy to send you some free seeds that I know would be of a very high quality. And here's the thing. Philosophically, what you're saying to me is that, look, I'm not so sure about my skills, and so I don't want to start with the best seeds. But think of how
my outcome would have been this year.
How wrong-minded that is.
Wrong.
Because think about it. Okay, you're saying that your skills aren't that great, so you don't really want to waste any good seeds. Well, you said yourself the plants lived and they came to fruition, and you did halfway. Imagine how much better they'd be if they had started with really good genetics. I mean, and if you think about it, great genetics, even given an average environment, is going to give you a better than average result. Whereas if you have poor genetics, even if you gave it a perfect environment, it's still going to be poor genetics at the end of the day, right? So why risk months of your efforts and your resources to grow something that it's iffy whether it's going to be that for a lousy $100 insurance policy, you could have bought, great seeds.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. And you literally just taught me a lesson right here on the show, because as you're saying that, I was like, he's right. I should have just went with my gut instinct, got the good seeds, and then I'd be sitting on whatever I'd be sitting on better than what I had,
And I think I hear,
which was good, but I think it'd be better. For sure.
Right. And I think I hear you saying that it's even more generally applicable to all things. And I've always said to people when they want to start a new hobby or something, like maybe you're going to buy a bow and arrow or a bicycle or whatever sport you're going to get into. Some people have this mentality like, I'll buy some cheap equipment and see if I like the sport. And then later, if I do, then I'll get the good stuff.
Well, what if the cheap equipment sucks?
You bought the cheap equipment and the good equipment. Why not just buy the good equipment to start with? And you're more likely that you're going to like the sport too, right? Like a lot of people, I play guitar, they'll say, what really taught me how to play guitar is I got a guitar that I was just like, I loved it. It was so beautiful. And it's something about having the good equipment will inspire you to rise to the level, instead of saying, well, I never really learned. I always had this cheap piece of shit guitar there. It's leaning in a corner over there. And maybe you might have actually liked playing guitar and taught yourself for longer and better if you actually had an instrument you enjoyed playing, right?
Mhm.
So I think that it's kind of applicable across the board. Whatever you get into, don't spare expenses on the equipment, you know, the thing that really is the,
I
Yeah,
wasted like 2 years
the
on an
base.
Amazon grow light.
right? Now, young people seem to, you know, use these LED lights to some, you know, effects. They're getting, I have an ex-assistant who used to work for me, and he grows under LEDs, and he brought over a couple jars for me yesterday. And I'm like, this stuff looks awesome, but I've never had any luck with LED lights. And people will say, what do you recommend for lights? And I got this, and they start talking LED, and I'm like, I'm completely out of my water. I have no idea what the LED thing. And here's why. In my day, here I am using, look at the expressions I'm using at my age. So, right? We'd buy either a high pressure sodium lamp for flowering and a metal halide for veg, and away you go. It seems to me with these LED lights, it's complicated. It's not like you can just plug them in and they work great. It's like there's tuning involved and different spectrums that they speak of, and like, woo, okay, why do we want to complicate this thing that used to be just a plug and go part of growing? And then, you know, you have newbies coming into it. And the whole thing with newbies in general, I've always felt is that a newbie will never underdo anything. You know, his problems always come from overdoing something, over fertilization, over water, too much of something. And so
Guilty.
There's also another effect that I call the gee whiz factor. And that's why so many of the newbies, like, instead of just growing directly in soil for a while and figuring out how, you know, to read a plant and know what it needs and have a little time to react, they want to go hydroponics right away.
They drop right into the water.
Rock wool.
Not me though. Not me. I love the soil, man.
I went out and got some rock wool, because remember I worked for Super Sativa Seed Club, and in their catalog back in the late 80s, it would have this whole section on how to grow in rock wool and all the advantages of it and why they do it in Holland. And I'm like, I'm trying to do it in a walk-in closet while I was in graduate school. And I mean, that first crop in rock wool completely just died. I had no idea how to keep the pH and the nutrients and all that stuff correct.
And the proper moisture too, right? With rock wool, if you water too soon, it stays way too wet. Or if you wait just too long, it's bone dry. And like, you got to have it dialed to a T.
Well, they advertised it more as like, you can't overwater, you just, you know, it can be continuously dripped on. And, you know, but the only thing was the pH, especially back in the 80s. You'd buy rock wool and it would have a pH of like 11 or something. You had to soak it in acid water for days until you brought the pH down into like the 6s.
That's crazy.
I think
that's really high.
They've changed that since then, I think. But
I like soil. I'll probably stick there for a while.
I use like
it.
Mixture of,
I'll be honest. He gave me like I don't know. I got like 7 different ones, and they all did really well. They all did, and I've never taken care of a clone like ever in my life. Like, I've asked him I definitely called him mad times when he was like eating dinner or something, and I'd be like, oh, how do I do this? And he'd be like, just do this, this, and that. All right.
One of the plants has a leaf that's turning yellow. What do I do?
Actually, mine have been so green, like insane, like dark, lush green, like beautiful.
Sure.
I really haven't had any problems with that.
But
To be honest, unless I was switching. Well, now that I'm switching, not because I did just flip.
Yeah.
Late.
During flowering, when you flip to flowering, and then you get the questions from guys that like, hey, I'm 4 weeks into flowering, and you know, some of the leaves are starting to turn yellow. What's going on? Is that okay? I said, have you ever been outdoors and walked through the woods in the fall? Do you know cannabis is, you know, when we flower it, we lower the lights to 12 hours a day to simulate autumn. And what do leaves do in autumn? Oh, they change color. So it's probably okay. You know, unless something really drastic is going on there, the whole plant's turning yellow or whatever. If you've got 1 or 2 leaves starting to fade, I mean, most guys feel like, oh, I got the nutrients just right. You know, it's fading at just the right time and stuff. But so you can't forget that sometimes yellow leaves and things like that aren't bad. It's just normal, you know?
Right.
Naturally,
like shock or what have you. Because that did happen to me in the beginning. Like, I was like, oh my God.
Normal autumn.
Yeah, just senescence.
Leaves just change color in autumn.
And but that, as a newbie, right? As we speak of newbies, like as myself being a newbie, like I struggled with that all summer. I was like,
Yeah.
oh my God. And then everything really turned out great. It's just all about maintaining and making sure that they're, trimmed well and properly, and they have the proper amount of water, or they're not getting too down. Now, see, with the outdoor, that's a little the damaging winds and all that kind of messed us up, because we are, in upstate New York. So we're getting all the crap weather in the summer
I
as
think
well. So
Colorado, that's
but I love
not
it,
a
man. It's
nice
like
environment
it's a passion that I've picked up among all my other fucking passions in life. And I know it drives my fiance crazy, but she's a green thumb, so she likes it. The
Yeah.
indoor, not so much, but
Well, they say smoking marijuana isn't addicting, but growing it is.
growing
Oh.
it is definitely addicting.
selling it was that was
Yuli,
addicting
like he
too.
said, you're gonna be hitting me up in like 4 or 5 weeks. Like, what is wrong with my plants? Why are they turning purple and yellow? I don't understand what's going on.
Yeah, it's gonna get weird. It's gonna get weird, but I think we're gonna be okay. I think we're gonna be all right.
What what is your opinion on like defoliating? Do you defoliate throughout the flower cycle?
Well, yeah, you reach a certain point about the 4th or 5th week where now you've got leaves
Oh no, technical difficulties. Sorry guys.
No.
outdoors that you have to remember the sun's like 93 million miles away, and the distance between the top of a plant that's 6 feet tall and the bottom of the plant, when it comes to the light, that's virtually no difference at all. The same light intensity at the top of the plant as the bottom. But indoors, our lights, for any distance, when you start to double the distance from the light, now you've reduced the light intensity by a quarter, right? Because it's a square. It goes by the square of the distance.
Yeah.
So the light intensity at 1 foot will now drop to a quarter of that at 2 feet, and then a quarter of that quarter when it's now 4 feet away. So it really drops off rapidly. So when you have the light being blocked by excess fan leaves, you want to get them out of the way and bring the light down to the parts of the plant that would benefit from being hit by that light. And don't think that just because the leaves up here are getting light, they're not sharing that necessarily with the buds downstairs that are in the dark. And you can prove that to yourself anytime you grow a thick canopy and you look at the buds that were not getting light underneath. The buds up on the top that were getting all the light, they weren't sharing that with those guys downstairs, right? So by taking and defoliating off the excess fan leaves, which by the way, many people will say, but that's like a solar panel for the plant and you're taking away this absorption of energy and the creation of, chlorophyll, and it's the whole photosynthetic process that and they'll wave their arms and say, no. But here's the difference. Indoors, there's no wind and insects and these things that you were just talking about, Yuli, where normal attrition on the plant would have it such that it loses probably half of its fan leaves somewhere in the middle of the summer, right? So that by fall, when the wind and the rains have really hit that plant, it's got a lot of those leaves have been blown off and knocked off by rain and wind and so on. But indoors, that's not happening. So it's okay to go in there and say, hey, let me be Mother Nature now and take away some of these fan leaves and expose more light to the parts of the plant that need it. And so that's why that works. And
also it's just focusing the energy on those big leaves anyways to keep them that big, right? And that lush, right?
Like I said, they're not really sharing. Yeah, they're just growing their own parts of the plant where the light's being absorbed.
Well, and also you have the fact that inside you don't, in the same effect, have the wind, right? And depending on the size room you have, you can't really have a lot of fan power oscillating. If you're in a 4x4 tent, you can only have so much fan power, else it's going to stress your plants out, right? Yeah. And so you need to remove leaves to get rid of the microclimates that are going to form, which is going to allow things like powdery mildew or botrytis to try and move in and take over your plant.
Yeah, that's right. The air movement that we're creating indoors is more at a level that keeps the air circulating around the plant enough that it's got fresh CO2 to breathe, and it's also knocking down those microclimates, like you said, that might be too high humidity and breed mold and that type of thing.
Absolutely. So in the same light, do you also, man, I'm trying to think of the proper term. I'm just going to go with shaved legs as well. like
Yeah,
remove the lowers.
it's
Yeah,
lollipopping.
lollipopping. That's what I was trying to
Yeah.
come up. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
If it's, let's say you have a net that supports your plants and they're all growing under a netting. A lot of guys use that. I do too. The stuff that's below the net more than like a foot is probably not going to get much light, and you may as well just trim them sucker branches off, and then it does really increase the output of the upper part of the plant.
I like to try and do 2 nets, and then just everything below the second one is just gone. See ya.
Yeah, that's the way most commercial grows do. I'm a little lazy. I guess I try to get away with one net, and I'm mostly growing for seed anyway. So
Yeah.
If the plants flop over and land on the net and stuff, they still make seeds the same. You know, so
I feel like we have to start a whole series with you, man. We have to
Yeah,
have like a
I
whole
might start my
separate,
own
like,
show, to be honest with, but the people around me have been saying, like, come on, you know, you got to do your own show. You got to either have a podcast or have a YouTube channel or something. And
Yeah.
I appreciate that you're saying that. And you know,
You
I'll
have
come on your
so
show,
much
as
knowledge.
I always come on people's podcasts when they ask me to. And so I'll be there for you, but I might start my own thing.
I would love it. We would love
Yeah,
to be
yeah,
a guest
we're
on your show.
supportive.
If you have any ideas, you know, shoot them at me. I'll take requests. I was just thinking, like, you know, after all these years and the varied experiences that I've had, and you know, being a little bit older than most of the guys in this field at this point, but still not being completely decrepit and senile, I might have some things to offer. I might be able to pass on little anecdotes and words of wisdom and advice to people, and sometimes people are just interested in how you do what you do, you know.
Yeah.
I'll say, here's a seed separating machine. You see how the vacuum, you know, sucks the air through it, and the seeds fall down, and all the particles of leaves get sucked to the other side. And they'll be like, "That's amazing! Holy shit!" You know,
That would blow my mind.
little
I'm
things that
already
you do,
amazed.
you know,
and
that people don't.
It was an arm movement. So I recently got into trying to do some pollen trucking myself. I'm not going to call it breeding by any means, but I'm working on trying to be able to call it breeding at some point. And so everything that you do is super, super interesting to me.
Well, I think that one of the things that people have to know, like if you're starting out like that, the people will come to me sometimes and say, "How do I get started doing this?" I'm like, it's a mystery, you know. You do what you do, put your passion into it, and love what you're doing. Try to get good at it by learning more all the time, and never assuming that you know it all. Like I've heard many times of wise people say, keep a beginner's mind, you know, or an apprentice mind, if you will, that you still feel like there's a lot of marvel and mystery in what you do, and you're learning all the time. Like, if we go back to me creating Cinderella 99, how did that happen? It wasn't because I was pollen chucking, and that's what people respected about that project, was that, wow, here's a guy who comes along in this climate of ignorance, the prohibition era where nobody's really communicating to one another. And I was vocal enough to put out on forums, here's what I'm doing. And I'll just quickly run through the whole process of cubing that created Cinderella 99, okay?
Oh, yeah.
So, and what that is that if you have a special plant and you want to make seeds from that will replicate that plant, we talked about selfing a little while ago, but again, that was something we all didn't really understand it all that well back then. But the idea came to me that, very simply, we are always a product of our two parents, 50-50, right? You got half your genes from your father, half your genes from your mother. So start with that idea. And so I have this female plant I called Princess. It was from a special seed that I grew out of some weed that I bought in Amsterdam at a little shop called the Sensi Smile Cafe. And it was just a couple doors down from where Sensi Seeds was. So I think that they were where they got their weed. Anyway, there were some seeds in the bud. I saved them. I grew them out. One turned out to be so amazing because it had this pineapple flavor. It was a compact plant. It had a lot of very sativa-like effect in the weed itself, the resin production, the taste, the high, everything. But it grew short and compact like an indica. I'm onto something for indoor growers. This would be incredible, right? So I said, I got to make seeds that will produce this same plant and be able to send it all over, you know, to my friends on the internet, in the forums that I was part of. One of them, the main one, was called the 77. We called ourselves 2 sevens. And So I wanted to share this plant with all of these guys without sending them a clone of it. I wanted to create a seed line that would reproduce it, right? So going back to this idea, you get half your genes from your mother, half the genes from your father. I said, okay, if I cross this special female with a male, and especially if it's a male that is different looking than her, in her children, as I look through them, I'll see the ones that look more like her and the ones that look more like the father. And if I choose the ones that look like the mother, and I take a male and I cross it back to the same clone again, remember, the first time the mother and the father made seeds, they were 50-50, right? Now, if you take one of their children and breed it back to the mother, he's already got 50% of his genes in him, right? And he's bringing that into the seed and contributing half of a half, which is a quarter. So 25% of the mother's genes from the male are now being passed on to the seeds. And of course, every time the female breeds, she's contributing half of her genes. So that means the second generation of those seeds would now have 75% of that original female's genes, theoretically. I mean, this isn't something that where a geneticist would say, yeah, you're right. It's more complicated than that. But I was making a simple model and seeing if it would work, and it did. So in the end, what I did was 2 more generations. So now the third generation is 88% of that original female, and then the fourth generation, fourth generation is 94% of the original female's genes, if you go by this half of her genes and half of, from the other each time. And so then what I did was I'd take those seeds, and those would now be my new source for pollen for making Cinderella 99. So I have the fourth generation, the 94% males. When I grow them out and I cross the pollen to that original female princess, I would get 97%, which was close enough. And it was the year 1999. I just called it Cinderella 99 because it's like 99% that same plant. And so to get back to where you were originally going with the question, which was, like, how does somebody become a breeder? They have to be able to do something better than think that, well, if I take this strain and that strain, they both have cool names. This is like what? Silly Putty and Banana Split, or so, whatever. People have these wedding cake, Kush mints, whatever. They think that it works like a blender, and that by bringing these two things together, it's going to be like putting 2 flavors of ice cream into a blender, and you're going to get a milkshake that tastes a little bit like both, or like all of every flavor that's in both parents is going to be somehow.
See, that's why
with these polyhybrids.
Yeah, I don't understand that. I don't understand that. Like, I understand that.
Just like you and your sister, if you have a brother, or maybe you have several brothers, you don't look like twins, right? Each one of you is a different recombination of your parents' genes. And so each one of the seeds is the same thing, right? And when the genes are combined in the flower, when the pollen hits the flower, each one of those grains of pollen will be carrying a unique package of mates, half the things that they
DNA.
fit together like this, right? Remember, so our DNA splits, and instead of now in the cannabis, it's 20 chromosomes, and it splits into 10 and 10. Well, now 10 is in the female, 10 is in the male, and when they join together, now that creates a seed that has all 20 chromosomes. And so what happens in hybrids is that if you're taking a really pure, like a landrace mother and a landrace father, they can be from 2 different countries. And when they come together, there's virtually only one way that their genes combine, because they're so stable. Like this plant, when you breed, let's say we call it a Thai plant. All these Thai plants, over and over, you breed 2 Thai plants, you get more Thai plants. If we use dogs, if we had Dalmatians or German Shepherds, it's always going to make more German Shepherds. But if you cross that with a different breed, right, you get something that comes out in between, like these designer dogs are doing, like, what do they call them? Cockadoodles or
cockapoos or whatever.
Yeah. There's so many different ones now.
Miniature poodle,
right?
miniature poodle labs.
Right. Now, think about one of them. This this illustrates the point. See how everybody's face is lighting up. We all know about the designer dogs, right? What do they call? I wish I had a name for one of them. Cockapoos, something.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's two purebred strains that they cross together, and the result is
50-50.
unsurprisingly like a fucking blender. It's half and half. They got this shared traits from the two, and each one of the offspring looks alike, right? Because there's not too many different ways. It's almost like if you were combining marbles and there was two jars of marbles. One of them was all black marbles and one was all white marbles. And you had to take 6 from each jar every time and combine them together. What would you always get? 12 fucking marbles. 6 of them are black, 6 of them are white every fucking time, right? Now imagine a hybrid parent has a jar of marbles that has like 3 or 4 different colors in it. And so does the other one on the other side. Now you pull 6 marbles out of each jar and try to put them together. You're going to get 12 marbles that are different every fucking time almost, right? It's been a rare 2 times that you're going to get 12 marbles that are the same colors, right? So that's how breeding works. It's not a blender. It's like a lottery ticket. And only when you're dealing with 2 extremely stable strains will you ever get this blender effect where you get something that's like a split down the middle and shared characteristics from both parents. And it's reliably the same with every one of the seeds. So what you need to do is when you're breeding, you need to be thinking about that. That's the biggest thing. Because then if you do make seeds from 2 very like wildly varying hybrids, you're going to get certain ones that are like the bomb. Oh my God, this is a great, it's Alicia Keys. It's this beautiful thing that came from like a mix of 3 or 4 or 5 different races, right? But then you're going to occasionally get something that looks like the Elephant Man. It's everything fucking in between. So when you're selling seeds, I think you would be a charlatan if you're a seed maker and you breed that way and you say, here's a picture of what you're going to get when you grow these seeds. And here's the description on the back of the package that describes what the plant's going to look like and how you should feed it and how big it's going to be. All bullshit. There's way too much variety in what's going to come out of that pack to ever show one picture and one description that's going to describe what you get, right? I do that because I know that I'm combining things that now I've proven that this is the result. This is going to be a stable, uniform result from this pack of seeds. And and the other thing is that if I breed 2 strains together, the result has to be better than either of the 2 parents. Otherwise, why produce it, right? Because you could just go out and buy a better pack of seeds by buying either one of the 2 parents. Why create a pack of seeds that isn't better than both of its parents? It doesn't need to exist, right?
I agree 1,000%.
So those are some of the things that go through my mind as a breeder, all these years and how this stuff works.
Yeah, and there's so many on the market. I guess a better way to phrase it is there's not really very many that are going to the extent that you are to stabilize your plants and test. There's so many people just coming out with crosses every other day, crossing the hype strains and putting out even further polyhybrids that it really is going to take some work to stabilize those if those are genetics that you want to work with and try to actually have a breeding program with. Or like you said, every time you throw the pollen out, it's going to be a different result. Yeah. And even within the same set of pollen.
That's why for all these years when people will say, well, why don't you maybe do a cookie strain or one of these other things? Because I look at the genetic background of these plants that they're talking about and I say, I really won't be able to do what I do. That is, create a stable, uniform pack of seeds with that parent, at least not without a lot of back crossing and other types of, breeding techniques that would stabilize the strain. And by that time, the way things move in this industry, the name of a strain is popular for a few months and then it's like a blue dream, it's very faddish. They come in and out of favor for a period of time and then they're gone again, which is another reason I'm extremely proud with Cinderella 99, because here's something that was introduced just around the turn of the century, right? Listen to that phrase. And it's still popular to this day. And people will say nothing, outdated about Cinderella 99. It was one of the first strains that was created that actually had a name and a reputation and so on.
23 years. And it is still a lot of people's favorite. Like honestly, my favorite taste that I ever smoke is
Thank
this
you.
what comes out of this Indy 99.
I can't keep it around here. I mean, if I make any, in flower form, and
I can never keep it. If I have it,
gone.
it's gone. Like my friends know, someone knows, it's gone. I can't even keep it for myself.
Well, it's given me, a great source of pride all these years. And
I'll tell you what, man, you are a fucking legend. That's for sure. You are a teacher, and I can't wait to learn more from you. I feel like this opens the gateway to a great
this
friendship.
bodes well for my new show that I'm hoping to.
It sure does. And you can catch it right here. Yuli V said it.
I appreciate that, guys. Well, looks like we're coming to the close of our time together, but what a great time chatting with the four of you. We touched on a lot of
pleasure
things
was
in a
mine, all
casual
ours.
way, and it was pleasant time just talking. Didn't feel like an interview.
I'm super eager to get to my plants like right after this. Like I know I have to get my daughter off the bus and stuff and be a father, but like then I got to be my other father too,
Absolutely.
My second dad job.
Well,
Rick,
you guys
thank
have a great day. I'm sure from here on, the pressure's off. I don't have to, come on and talk to the world, and I'll just go back into my little seclusion here on the farm and take care of the animals and the plants and the rest of the people. So,
Tell our viewers where they can find you at, and where they can follow you.
well, if you are an internet buyer and you're looking to get our seeds, the simplest thing to do is go brothersgrimmseeds.com. And the website basically explains everything. We accept Venmo, we accept Zelle, which many people have. And of course, you can always write us a money order or check and mail that in. But credit card companies, we were talking earlier about, prohibition and how things have changed. We're still not at the level where a bank will allow you to have a cannabis business and put your money in their bank. So that's an issue. So credit cards it'd be nice if we could accept credit cards on our website is all I'm saying. And unfortunately, I have to apologize that being in the cannabis business, that's too challenging.
Sure.
Most
People will understand.
But thankfully, most of us nowadays we have a Venmo account. It's just as easy to pay using Venmo as anything else. And sometimes the older folks, just somebody who has a checking account, they just need to be reminded sometimes, but there's a Zelle facility attached to your checking account that you can pay using Zelle. And so that's on the website too. So
awesome.
brothersgrimmseeds.com, come and see us there for your packs of seeds. We also encourage the commercial buyers to come. We have several large clients that are nationwide, growing tens of thousands of Brothers Grimm seeds. So if you're interested in a bulk seed order and you say, hey, I want like a couple hundred seeds, or I want 1,000 seeds or 10,000 seeds, we have a page for that too. So just click on bulk seeds and you can order the larger quantities.
Heck
And
yeah,
they're
I
at
know
a much
Justin.
lower
Beautiful.
price too. As
Justin and I are
as the
trying
number
to-
of seeds you buy goes up, the price goes down per seed, obviously.
We're trying to switch our vault to strictly just you.
Anything I can do to help, just let me know.
Best strands.
We do have a wide variety, but honestly, like every day, I wouldn't say every day, but once a week, he texts me with, hey, do you want to do this? 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 And it's just your website.
Oh, nice.
Oh,
Beautiful.
man.
Appreciate that.
Well,
I'm
so
hoping
yeah.
things just keep going up, and we all enjoy what we're doing. It's great to have found a vocation that they always say if you can do what you love, it's like you never have to work another day in your life, right? So
Heck
Oh yeah.
we're
Rick,
That's what we're aiming towards.
yeah, you guys are podcasters in the cannabis world and breeding and creating seeds for the cannabis world.
We got an app coming out to
Hey.
help people that are starting their small businesses in our great state of New York. So we're doing a little
Did
bit
you know
of
that I was
little of
born in New
everything.
York?
I did not know
I did
that.
not.
Wow.
Albany, the capital.
What?
Albany.
Nice. That's like what,
I'm from
5 hours from us?
About
Five?
4,
We spent some
wait,
time
If
6.
you're in
over
New
there.
York City, it takes about 3 hours at most.
Is
We're
it?
in
It's
Rochester.
5 hours.
Oh,
4.5
Rochester, you guys
from
are out
here,
in the west.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
It's
snow
about
belt.
3-4 hours.
Oh my God. In the snow belt. Oh yes. Yes. Well, again, man, thank you for coming on. Really appreciate it. Very
pleasure.
informative. Very
My
informative.
pleasure.
I just want to say to everybody, make sure that you are, hitting that subscribe button, hitting that like button, comment, show us, what this means to you, because I know it means a lot to our community. It means a lot to us. hit the Patreon, give as much as you can. It's going to help out. It's going to help a lot more than just our initiative. So Justin, anything to add?
Yeah, and then head on over to the Instagram, and while you're there, make sure you go over to Brothers Grimm Seeds. Also check out, remind me, I don't know if you want people following your personal.
Yeah. I was just gonna stick that in too, because if you want to see more of the personal side of my life on the farm with the animals and everything, and I'm a photographer, so you'll occasionally see a nice picture of sunsets and Americana scenes and farm scenes and stuff. That's Mr. Soul, MRSOUL _C99. So
awesome.
Mr. Soul _C99.
With the legacy in there. Love it. All right. Well, with that being said, yeah, no problem. And with that,
stay lit, stay informed.
Peace.
Peace out.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the HerbaQuest Podcast. Be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications, as well as follow the links below so you can stay lit and stay informed.